Unless you're one of the elite, living in the Philippines before the 20th century was not exactly a bed of roses. The Indio constantly dealt with hunger and discrimination. The wealthy class, on the other hand, enjoyed all the luxuries within their reach. Speaking of luxury, their idea of entertainment is very different from ours. So, if you can survive a week without Netflix binge watching or Facebook stalking, this era would have definitely bored you to tears. So let's look back on 5 ways our forefathers entertained themselves during the early days. Listening to Luneta's world-class band concerts. The Spanish-era Luneta was not only known as a place of execution, it was and still is a leisure ground where people from all walks of life could unwind and witness the sunset after a hard days of work. What makes the 19th century Luneta different from the Luneta of today is a presence of a bandstand. World-class musicians such as the legendary Philippine Constabulary Band once performed in this area to serenade the people strolling at the park. Listening to relaxing band concerts was one of the reasons why people frequented this place. Luneta gave them an incredible opportunity to hear soothing music long before portable music players were even considered possible. First Lady Helen Heron Taft stayed in the Philippines in the early 1900s, back when her husband was still serving as civil governor. In her memoir, entitled Recollections of Full Years, she recounted how Luneta inspired her to make a similar park in Washington called the Potomac.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Attending home parties.
It's party time.
Entertainment for the Manila's elite was social entertainment. This could mean attending family reunions, during which each of them showcased refined taste and skills in music, poetry, dance, and virtual arts. Or they could be invited by someone to attend events where they could hobnob with other members of the social circles. These included the tertulia, which a simple get-together with a touch of poetry and music, bailes or dances for formal balls, and bodas, a wedding celebration with artistic literary overtones. Events like these were usually held on the second floor of the host's European-inspired house. These were also an opportune time for different families to prove that they had a sense of urbanidad, defined as a delicacy in taste, graceful and studied gestures, extreme politeness, a desire for knowledge, artistic accomplishment, stylish attire, knowledge of world history and geography, and a fancy home.
Yeah, I love parties.
Playing Panguingue.
4 jacks.
Apart from cockfighting, Filipinos in the 19th century who had nothing productive to do often engaged themselves in Panguingue. This is a card game similar to Rummy, usually played with 8 or 10 decks. Such was its popularity during the Spanish colonial period that it was regularly depicted in various illustrations and artworks from that era. One of them was drawn by Charles Wigman, a British artist who visited Asia in the 1850s as a special correspondent for the Illustrated London News, or ILN. What probably started as an innocuous activity gradually became a full-blown vice. In fact, one newspaper editorial perfectly demonstrated how gambling had corrupted the Filipina through a drawing that shows her head stuck in a trash bin, labeled Panguingue with all the evils leaking from it. The dangers of Panguingue also didn't escape the consciousness of leading 19th century Filipino intellectuals. Jose Rizal, in his 1889 letter addressed to the 20 young women of Malolos, underscored some of the bad qualities he despised in a woman. Rizal's fellow propagandist Marcelo H. Del Pilar likewise put Panguingue in a very bad light in his letter to his niece dated March 13, 1889.
You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Playing football in the streets.
What?
Long before we started our love affair with basketball, Filipinos were actually football aficionados. In fact, football was our primary sport during the Spanish colonial period, and one of the greatest football players in history, none other than Paulino Alcantara, was born in Iloilo City. Charles Wirgman, a British artist who once visited Manila in the 1850s, was amazed by how Filipinos played the sport in the Manila streets. Even though football is one of England's oldest games, Wirgman noted that he had never seen it played with such dexterity as in Manila. Along with the illustration above, Wirgman also left behind an eyewitness account of how 19th century Filipinos played the game using a ball made of wickerwork, like the one we use in sepak takraw. They stand in a circle and with their feet keep up the ball for any length of time. The game is never to let it touch the ground after it is once up, and always to manage to strike it with the feet. The game is a most extraordinary sight, and the players are wonderfully clever at it. The popularity of football started to decline as soon as the Americans took over the Philippines. Even the establishment of the Philippine Football Federation in 1907 and our victory in the Far Eastern Games didn't deter it from fading into obscurity. Eventually, football was replaced by basketball, and the Filipinos have never looked back since.
Wasn't that just amazing?
Watching Moro-Moro. The Spaniards hated the Moros, a term referring to the Philippine Muslims, so much that they wrote and popularized a play just to demonize them. Known as the Moro-Moro or Linambay in Cebu, this 19th century comedy was usually performed during a week-long celebration leading up to the town fiesta. It reached the height of popularity before it was replaced by vaudeville, cines, and zarzuela. Its origin remains debatable. Some sources agree that it took inspiration from the 17th century victory of Governor General Sebastian Hurtado de Corcuera over the Maguindanao warriors led by Sultan Kudarat. Others believe it took shape from their enactment done by the people in Manila shortly after they learned of the Moros' defeat in the said battle. Moro-Moro performances were among the most anticipated events in the Spanish colonial Philippines, and everyone involved took it seriously.
Why so serious?
In fact, each town assigned a comite de festejos to collect the funds needed to build a stage where the comedy would be performed. Some of the wealthier members of the townsfolk sponsored the costumes and jewelries, while others gladly volunteered to supply the band music to accompany the marches and battles in the play. Laced with anti-Muslim propaganda, Moro-Moro often has Christian prince who is handsome, manly, and courteous as a protagonist. The Moros, meanwhile, are depicted as the bad guys who abducted the princesses, attacked Christian kingdoms, and killed innocent people they met along the way. The latter usually wore elaborate shiny costumes and a headdress called purong. The play usually held for 3 to 9 days and attended by Filipinos from different social classes. It was not just a simple theatrical performance, it became a tool for the Spaniards to reinforce the superiority of Roman Catholicism over Islam, and the idea that the only way to salvation is through conversion to the colonizer's religion. When the Spanish colonial rule was over, the popularity of Moro-Moro declined too. Although the tradition continues to this day, in some parts of the country, this comedy is now generally perceived as a dying art, a memento from an era that once created division between Filipino Christians and Muslims.
Unholy enemies!
Looking for more entertainment? What are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notified for more entertaining videos.